I understand it's very easy to say I don't have time.
Yeah.
But then, like, okay, how do you make time when you're already working 2 jobs, when you're spending time with family, and then you want to get out of that? Like, going into the business, you're going to have to sacrifice one of the stuff.
And I think one of the key things you said, it was sacrifice.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Driven. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing a phrase both you and I have used from time to time, which is, I don't have time. Now, I know we're discussing this topic because I know, like how I mentioned, both you and I have used that phrase from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, I know recently I wanted to start running.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, man, you know, like, oh, you asked me. You're like...
So, yeah, I remember I was asking you if, you know, you were going to start running because we pretty much have access to, like, a treadmill.
Yep.
And so I remember asking, like, oh, so you're going to start running? Or are you going to start running? And you were like, I forgot what you said. I forgot, yeah, but I don't have time.
Yep.
And then for me, at least, it's not you in general. I don't like that. I don't have time or I can't. And I think it just stemmed from right here at the warehouse. I think it really stemmed from that because there's a lot of times where I asked or told people, not told, but I asked people like, can we do this? Or why don't we do this? And the reply was always, oh, there's no way. And now we can't do that. That's impossible. And so constant replies like that. But the thing is that I saw it from like a different angle, and I knew it was possible. I knew you could do it, but it's because people were saying, oh, I can't. No. I always heard a lot of no's. It really started to bother me, and then the more I thought of it, is like the I can't, no, and the I don't have time. It's not true. And so I remember I asked you, like oh, so you're gonna start running? And you were like, I don't have time. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that bothered me. That bothered me internally, because I'm like, dude, you have time.
Right.
You work, and that's pretty much it. And so, well, I mean, you have other things. Well, like, I didn't hear. Mm. And so that's something that it didn't bother me, but I'm like kind of like the thoughts that I had over there, like at the warehouse or, you know, at work. It's like, I think you have time. It's just that you choose to prioritize. And that, you know, that's the topic. You choose to prioritize what you do with your time.
Right. And so with that, like, I understand your point of view, but with that, it was more of, it's because we're so used to like, man, I don't have time, or like, you know, I have so many things going on. Yep. But then, you know, kind of like it goes back to how you were going to say prioritizing. Okay, yes, we go to work, you know, I come here at 4 a.m. to work out. Mm-hmm. And then I stay here until like 4:30 if we have something to discuss. I go home, spend like an hour or two with my parents, and then I go home to my wife.
Right.
So like, yes, there's 2 points of, you know, in my way, there's 2 points of viewing this. It's like, yes, I don't have time because I'm choosing to spend time with, you know, I'm choosing to spend time working on the business, right, because that's important. Right. I'm choosing to spend time with my parents, right, and then also spend time with my wife. So it's like, yes, I could make time to go run, but it's like, I'm gonna have to choose like one of those 3 to spend less time on. Right. So it's either gonna spend less time with my wife, less time with my parents, right, or a little bit less time working.
No, I get that, but it's also like I think one of the things that people should stop doing is using time as an excuse, or using excuses. I think people should be more proactive, or I don't know the right word, but should be talk differently, and I don't mean like just the language, but it should view it differently. Like,
I think it's because we're so used to like growing up. It's just like, man, I don't have time, or like, are you gonna go to this place? Well, I don't know, you know, I don't have time, or, you know, or are you gonna start this thing? Well, you know, I just don't know how to. I think it's just we're so used to that, and now, you know, being exposed or changing our mindset. It's like, oh, you know, if you really look at it, you do have time. You just have to prioritize one thing over the other. Yep. I think that's more than anything, that's what it is.
And then that's what I was mentioning to you. Yeah. Like when you use the time, I mean, you have time. That's why I gave that example of, for example, myself. What is it? You know, work, and then pretty much my son. And so like, I do have time. You have time. We have what 16 hours, let's say, assuming we sleep 8 hours a day. We all have like 16 hours a day. Yep. It's just what we choose to do with that time. Yep. You know, I choose to work. I choose to spend time with my son. Yep. And one of the really bad things I think to do would be to use time as an excuse, or using your son. I have to take care of my son. I think that's really bad, to use like your family or someone else as an excuse, because then that kind of like puts the blame on them.
I guess one of my questions is, what would you recommend for people maybe to start prioritizing, or maybe being self-aware, instead of saying, you know, like, I want to do all these things, but then I don't have time to do this and that? What would you recommend, or like what's the first step for a lot of people, like including ourselves, to like just stop using the I don't have time?
The thing is, I think people should look at it as that we all have time. It's just that maybe all of the things that we want to do may not fit within the time. And so I think if we just prioritize like the most important, like for example, the most important is spending time with family, then work, you know, then what else is important for people? Let's say health. And then, you know, another example, let's say for some people, it's not for me, spending time with friends. Then after that, let's say, you know, just prioritizing what is the most important things for you. And then maybe like as you get down towards the line and the time fills up of, you know, the time that you do have, maybe then like, you know, going out to bars is pretty much cut out. Going out to the clubs is cut out because you don't have the time. And so I think as long as you prioritize what really is the most important, not necessarily what, like, for example, like going out to bars or going clubbing, like it's fun and whatnot.
Right.
Not to me, but for some people it might be. If you just prioritize the most important things, you'll use up that, you know, you'll use up the time that you do have. And then the rest, well, you know, it'll just fall off. But, you know, just prioritize what's most important and what would be most productive, most productive, and that will help you reach the goals that you really want to. Then I think it also just stems from like, what do you want?
Right. And then I guess a follow-up question, like, I understand the prioritizing, but then it goes back to like, okay, if you want to start something else, like let's just say people are already working.
Right.
They're working one job, and then okay, they need a second job because they need the income. Okay, so they already have two jobs, and then the rest of the time they want to spend with family.
Right.
Okay, now they want to start a business, they want to start something else. Like when it comes to that, like and that's my whole thing. Like, I understand it's very easy to say I don't have time.
Yeah.
But then like, okay, how do you make time when you're already working two jobs, when you're spending time with family, and then you want to get out of that? Like going into the business, you're gonna have to sacrifice one of the stuff.
And I think one of the key things you said, it was sacrifice. I think you're gonna have to sacrifice, you know, some of those things. Now, like, if you need that, and that goes like, what are you willing to sacrifice? You could sacrifice, let's say, the work, and then maybe like with the money, you know, like sacrificing work, your income will go down, and maybe you might have to sacrifice, let's say, you might have to, like, you know, use your credit card, or, you know, take out a small loan, sacrificing, you know, that aspect, the financial aspect, to start the business. Sacrificing the time with your family, and, you know, to some you may be willing to some others you won't. You know, you may not be willing to, but, you know, it's a sacrifice. And, you know, if you choose to sacrifice that, then, you know, that's one of the things. Another one is choosing to sacrifice sleep. I think for me that's the easiest, or I think for people that's the easiest, sacrificing sleep.
And then jumping off that, like right now we are sacrificing, because I know towards the beginning of the year we were really struggling. And so we made it like, we kind of told ourselves, you know, we should focus more on the business. So one thing we decided to do is sacrifice a little bit of spending time with the family. Saturdays and Sundays we come here 4 a.m. We leave around 8:30, 9, sometimes 10. Yesterday we left at 10. Today, right now, we're recording on a Sunday,
and we're having a storm right now. Well, right now it's August 20th, and we're in LA area. So there's supposed to be, you know, Hurricane Hillary. You know, and it's supposed to be like, you know, I think it hasn't happened since 1930 that, you know, like this type of, you know, weather, and we're expected, I think, 10 inches of rain. So like, you know, maybe we're sacrificing, you know, to some extent, you know, our safety. Granted, I don't feel like that's bad, but and then one of the things that, you know, at least for me, like I did sacrifice is, you know, waking up on either Saturday or Sunday, and a lot of the times, and that's one of the things that I do, like, you know, sacrificing time with family. Like, it's like my son wakes up and he just starts babbling, and I wake up to his babbling, and that kind of brings me joy. So sacrificing to extend a little bit of that. But I know, like, and that's one of the things, like what you're willing to sacrifice, and to me, I know that I know we're working really hard for the next few months, and then after that, we're pretty much going to be able to kind of like, enjoy those things. And so that's something I'm looking for. And then also the net outcome of us sacrificing that time is going to be like, and you've seen the change.
Yep.
From the beginning of this year to like now, like 180 completely in terms of the business.
Yep.
And so I know like maybe within the next few weeks within the next few weeks, like we might, let's say Sunday we're cutting off, like say Sunday we're cutting it off, as in like we're not going to come to work. And then maybe in the future Saturday, and then maybe in the future, we're gonna have that ability that the business is running on its own, and we don't necessarily need to be here.
Yep.
Although that's probably not gonna be within us to do that.
Yeah, and it goes back to like, I know it's hard because we're so accustomed, we're so used to just of thinking, man, like I don't have time. Like I'm already spending time working. I'm already spending time with my family, but. I think it goes back to like, what are we willing to do to like achieve what we want to achieve or what we value, like and it goes back to like, we could look at it at a different perspective. Like our value, at the top is probably our family. It is our family. Okay, so short term we're choosing to sacrifice spending time with them, working on the business, so then long term we could spend a lot more time with the family. So it's just changing your perspective. And I think reflecting and then being self-aware of like, man, it's not that I don't have time, it's just that I'm choosing to do other things. I think that's more than anything. And little by little you're gonna stop using that I don't have time, or you're gonna stop using excuses.
And it is gonna be hard, because even up to this day, like we still use it from time to time, like I don't have time, like I can't, because I have this. But we can, it's just that we're choosing not to do it. But then knowing that you choosing not to do it might result in not a result that you want. Understanding that too. So a lot of it I think is conscious, because a lot of the things that we say and we do have been unconscious or subconscious. But as long as you become more conscious in the language and kind of like your choices and decisions, I think the better off you'll be in the long term, as long as you're like conscious about your language and the decisions that you make.
And just to sum 2 points is that I don't have time is really a myth, and you just have to look at your time and see what you value and see what you're willing to sacrifice, and also see what you're not willing to sacrifice.
Right.
But in your words, is there anything else you want to sum it up with?
No, it's pretty much what you said. That I don't have time, it doesn't exist. We all have the time. We all have the time. We have like I think we talked about like 16. We all have time. It's just like how you said, it's just seeing what you do with that time. But then also understanding like your choices also determine the outcome.
Cause and effect.
And so like I think it all stems from like, what do you really want to do? And then from understanding that, you can then choose what to prioritize, and then and then not using, and then that will result in not using that I don't have time, because then from knowing what you want to choosing what you do, that's really all you need. And then the I don't have time doesn't exist anymore.
It is gonna take quite a bit of time for you to get used to, like I mentioned. I'm repeating myself, but it is gonna take quite a bit of time. And just try to catch yourself whenever you tell yourself, man, I don't have time. Or like how you mentioned, like it stands from the warehouse, the I don't know, or like I can't. It's just try to catch yourself, because like it's not that you can't, it's just instead of saying I can't, it's better to say, okay, I don't know right now, let me figure out how to go about it, or let me figure out a solution. I think that's a better way. And like I mentioned, it's just gonna take time. How Juan mentioned, or how my brother mentioned, is we do that from time to time. We still do that. It's just like, it's a process. It's an ongoing process of learning and evolving.
Now I understand when we were in WG. Why the I can't or can't was was there in big words, because I think a lot of people use can't the kind of like the negatives. Can't, cannot, it's not possible, no time. I feel like a lot of people use that without even thinking of it. And so now I understand why, like, an environment like that would have, that word crossed out. So yeah, as we progress through life, I think a lot of things make more sense.
And so with that was pretty much the myth of the I don't have time, and just learning how to prioritize. Like I mentioned, it's going to take time, but I think it's good to keep it in the back of your head of always catching yourself saying that. And instead of using I can't or I don't have time, or like you mentioned, the negatives, start using, okay, maybe I don't know right now, but let me find the solution. Let me figure out, let's see what else I could do. And little by little, your mindset is going to start changing. It changed for us. Like, we still fall back to like the I can'ts, but little by little it's going to start changing.
Yeah. And then as you were saying that kind of like I've thought of this too, like out of our environment. I don't want to sound like, it's not bragging or kind of trying to put us like on top, but like out of our environment, we've done something good, I think. We're doing something good in life, or, progressive in life. And when I say progressive, like, advancing in life, I think. But and then the only difference that I do see, because pretty much we grew up the same, everyone grew up the same, but the only difference is, I think, our mindset. Because if you look at everyone else around us, or who was around us, they all had the mindset. And so I think if you do start changing that, of like if you do start changing your mindset, I think that's going to go a long way, because that's really the only difference or one of the only differences that I do see between us and other people is the mindset.
It's going to take a while, and it is going to sting, telling yourself like, man, I shouldn't be saying this, or, like, I need to change. It is going to sting at first, and it's going to be really hard. It was hard for us, especially when we were fresh out of high school, teenagers. But yeah, it's just a matter of continue doing it.
And with that all being said, this has been another episode of Driven. My name is Juan.
My name is Alexis.
And we'll see you on the next one.